Morning and welcome to everyone. I'm Brigitte Binneman, as mentioned, and I am here on behalf of the Department of Science Innovation. And I'm going to talk a bit about early stage tech instruments. So, as everyone else has mentioned, it's key that we start with, in government as well, with the Sustainable Development Goals, which then forms the basis on which we have the National Development Plan, which is our blueprint for tackling the challenges in terms of eliminating poverty, reducing the inequality, and how to grow then an inclusive economy for our country. This is also further based on the white paper that we use, as an enabling and innovation environment policy or guiding document for us in the space. And, it specifically mentions increasing support for collaboration with the business sector, targeted technology development and deployment to support then specific firms and SMMEs. The policy intent specifically around, commercialization of publicly funded IP, then supporting businesses in research and development needs, the global value change that we need to assist with, increased levels of funding, as well as, then specifically looking at the increase of funding is how do we finance the science, technology, and innovation? And, one of the recent things that we have brought on board from the department side is then this innovation fund, which is called in the document a sovereign innovation fund, which we couldn't then, name sovereign, but then, became the innovation fund. More recently, we also have the decadal plan that is functioning as our implementation framework. And this framework assists us with the, implementation of this white paper. And it assists us with, looking at the whole of society, the whole of government, the science and innovation, and how are we pooling these resources across government to implement the initiatives within the decadal plan. So the decadal plan draws input from various documents, the national development plans, the white paper, some synthesis reports, as well as foresight studies, and, also including the HESTL ministerial review. So the decadal plan has two mutually reinforcing arms. One is the continued investment to develop the system. On the other side is pivoting the NSI towards making increased and positive impact and socioeconomic as well as environmental priorities that we need to consider while making this impact. So while driving this, the decadal plan also provides perspective on commercialization, specifically around, comprehensive startup packages that, can assist through hub-type support centers, coaching, mentoring services, as well as the IP commercialization strategy for the publicly funded research and development, as well as an approach for then supporting and commercializing these technologies. We also further then look at stimulating science, technology, and innovation through trade synergies. So, using science diplomacy as an enabler to assist with commercialization, improving the opportunities to diffuse technologies, promote the commercialization of, science and innovation within our country, as well as then promote commercialization of the publicly funded IP across the borders. The policy also provides, for incentives and instruments. Innovation, should then be, considered through the different incentives that we have and, what needs to be achieved, as well as the instruments of how do we want to achieve this and how do we measure these and how do we aim them to make this difference that we aspire through the decadal plan. Recently in February, we had a national symposium where we brought together various players in the NSI, and it gave a 10-year perspective. But what we could draw from the outcomes of the symposium was that there's a lot of aspiration for South Africa. We are known as a nation of creators and not just consumers, but there are still many areas of improvement. And these are some of the challenges that was just highlighted again, that are some of the constraints in terms of commercialization: the limited human resources, funding for early stage and high risks innovations. There's a clear gap in early stage funding, the poor coordination and fragmentation of our system that continues, the low funding and decline in spending on experimental research, tech transfer, system challenges that we have. We have, a number of universities, but not only 5 of them, can be the main contributors to 85% of the output. Is the TTO model that we have, the only model that we can use to assist this. The low investments in science, technology, and engineering infrastructure, the role of the private sector. How do we bring them back on board? How do we tailor the research that is being done through our HEIs so that it considers not only delivering on the outcomes of what the researchers are there for publications and students, but also doing research that really involves industry and how we can take then this on forward. We also sit with the lack of the procurement of pre-market solutions. It's a challenge that needs to be addressed. The early stage startup ecosystem. There's a whole ecosystem around early stage startups. What do we need to put in place to support them? How do we better support them? Where do they go? What do they need to do? They might not always know, how to go about, the next round or which partners they can approach. But one thing that we've also seen is that there's definitely a decrease in the quality of the ventures, particularly specifically for us deep tech startups, that's becoming a challenge. And we'll touch a bit on some of these as we continue. So in terms of the STIs in the white paper, we have government, and, what does this mean, in terms of measuring, through the OECD. We have investment, any measures, and advantages according to specific enterprises and categories of enterprises that can assist, the direction of government, as well as measure and interventions. These are these legislative measures that we are putting in place aimed at stimulating investment. And then, enterprise and finance, how do we as government put, systems in place to address market failures and provide public support measures? So there's then rationale for us to have a range of business incentives, not only for, efficiency, but also, trying to see how do we do it in a fair way. So it's not only about boosting the investment, but also ensuring that we have social protection. We provide risk capital. We want to promote and export our things, but there must be a fair outcome in addressing some of these market failures. So in terms of this, there is a whole business incentive approach. And, we have conventional direct, that's financial, as well as indirect incentives, such as the tax incentives. But there's also a range of outcomes that, we want to achieve through R&D incentives. And these, are linked to skills, those for small businesses, capital, market incentives, transformation plays a big role within government. And then we also have, value chain perspectives that we need to consider in terms of supply and demand, and how, we then need to go about as a government partner, considering, what kind of innovation instruments do we put in place and what classification do we use for this. So there's a range of measures that comes to play when we want to, put these in place and ensure that we are creating, something that's suitable and that, takes into consideration the conditions for innovation. So for us at the department, we see ourselves more on the supply side, on providing this to the value chain, in terms of providing innovative competency, as well as, looking at technology adoption and generation of these, as well as the early stage support for the innovative ventures. So through these innovation instruments, there are various interventions. We look at knowledge and innovation that are being created, also understanding the benefits from failure of technology trends, regulation and standards, influencing and the demand for innovation, increasing interactions and ensuring that we are, doing at the right level, providing these platforms, and then providing not only financial but also non-financial capabilities to these. So there are several conditions for innovation support and instruments. From the NSI, we need to have an effective NSI. For commercialization, the system that we needs to translate to knowledge outputs, products, and services to better the lives for all South Africans. In terms of funding, we need an effective funding system, especially venture capital, to support our small businesses and our early stage startups. The IP is key to this. There's certain policies and legislations on how we take publicly funded innovations and move them forward, as well as infrastructure, and it has been mentioned, that there is limited funding in terms of infrastructure, and how do we address these moving forward? So one of the things that we do have at the department is the tax incentives program for R&D. It's, a mechanism to try and assist by reducing the tax burden and the cost to undertake R&D. There's, been some changes to the program over the last years, but, it's just a mechanism to assist with R&D. And then, there are some conditions for these tax incentives from, basic research activities, access to local networks, conductive IP frameworks, and then the availability of human capital that goes with this. And we also have, as part of the department, support that we provide to technology transfer offices, as our arms for innovation.
Now, the department of zoology and entomology,
And then the objectives is here to maximize the contribution to public investment in the research and development and innovation that happens at the HEIs, and then exploring, how this can benefit economic growth and the management and the diffusion of then this knowledge, but not only for that, but also spinning out in businesses and taking this to the market. So we have these technology transfer offices. They are, part and parcel of, the intellectual property rights. And there are several chapters that are key to this act, and, how they then link up with, the support that we need to drive from the department side in terms of, but they play a key role in taking some of the research and development that happens, to then the market. We also look at equity finance for innovative enterprises. We do this for early stage equity funding. This is the new innovation fund that we have been talking about. And, it's trying to bring, private investors, venture capital, as well as entrepreneurs, and see how we can then, take these types of initiatives and address some of the financial imperfections that we have, and ensure that we create, firms that operate in a, innovative environment that's risky, where others do not fund, where we can assist with them taking up this role. So just a little bit of an update on the Innovation Fund progress. It's in, capital investments. We have done just over 900 million over, a range of funding implementing partners that we have. The funds also, supports then these 12 venture capital funds to assist us to reach further. We have as leveraging effect from the VC fund portfolio, as well as from the immediate intermediary level investment that we made. The investment also is per the business stages. You will see that there's still a lack of early stage funding, despite us trying to fill this gap. There's a lot more funding available from Series A and Series B because there's not a lot of players that do want to assist in taking the early stage risk. So the amount of startups that we have is we are currently supporting 96 of them, and they provide, a range of offerings, both service and products that are being offered to the market. They are distributed nationally, with exception from the Northern Cape as well as Free State, where we do not have any investments yet. We make use of, providing support to the startups, and they employ then a business to business model, or a business to consumer, or a business to government model. And there are 15 of these startups that are making use of licensing as a business model, and we've decided to also indicate that. So in terms of revenue generation and profitability, so most of these startups are still, very early stage, so pre-revenue, but we also have, 51 of them that are post-revenue. And in terms of funding, we can see that ICT, manufacturing, health, and agriculture are the top sectors that we are, providing funding support for. The enabling technologies is, that are dominant, within these startups that we have, is looking at medtech, biotech, agritech, cleantech, and AI. So these are the areas that, the main bulk of the funding is going towards. And then it gives you an indication as well of, 1,328 employees that, are being supported through this investment. So we also give a breakdown of, the diversity of the workforce, as well as the leadership teams for these. And then we have some successful exits through this already. It's Wormvest, Artisan Biomed that was acquired by Mediclinic, and then Stone 3. So other support instruments that we are considering to assist and that we want to build on specifically from the Innovation Priorities and Instruments Directorate is then technology centers, incubators, accelerators, other types of grants, how we can, build this in, and then also looking at vouchers to support then collaboration and innovation. So just to sum up, there's a lot of things that we can do in terms of putting the appropriate innovation policy instruments in place, and it's more challenging to identify the right instruments and, those that we can roll out on a national level. There's also, some of the main problems is the lack of adequate levels of research in different policy instruments and enhancing the research and innovation. And this is an area where, there needs to be focus, but there's also a lack of demand in certain product innovations. And therefore, we also need to take that into consideration, specifically also in areas where there's strict regulations, where we need to also think on how do we bring, instruments in a mix that targets specific problems. So, yeah, that is it from my side. Thank you very much, everyone.